Good evening. Having reached the appointed time and place, I'm going to call this meeting of the Grand Ledge Public School Board of Education to order and ask that everyone join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's call the roll. Mr. Quina. Mrs. Dufort.
Here.
Mrs. Winstanley.
Here.
Mrs. Mulvena.
Here.
Mr. McKinnon. Here. And I am here. At this time, I would entertain a motion for the approval of agenda items.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the September 24th, 2018 agenda items as presented. Second. Thank you.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. And the motion carries. So now I would accept a motion for the approval of consent agenda items.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the September 24th, 2018 consent agenda items as presented.
Support.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed no. And the motion carries. Which brings us to the section on reports. And I believe we have an audit report, and Zach from Manor Costerian is here. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm Zach Skriniars. I'm with Manor Costerian. In front of you, you'll have the financial audit, one letter, and then a supplemental letter as well. I'm going to start by going over the financial statements, the audited financial statements. I'll be flipping through some pages, so I'll give everyone a couple seconds to flip through as I go along as well. I'm really going to focus on some key highlights in the statements. But please don't hesitate if you have other questions. I'm more than happy to answer anything that I can for you. I'll start off by saying there are a couple major changes this year to the statements themselves. One thing that has been coming through the pipeline for a while was the implementation of Governmental Accounting Standard 75, otherwise known as GASB 75, as I'll refer to it. That was us implementing, we had to book the proportionate share of Grand Ledge's unfunded pension or OPEB liability that the state has. If you remember, a few years ago, we implemented GASB 68. That was this pension piece, this unfunded pension piece. This year, we had to implement the unfunded OPEB piece, other post-employment benefits. And so you'll see that as we go through the statement. As a result, we had to do some restating of the net position for your full accrual government-wide financial statements. We have some footnote disclosures as it relates to this as well. But this is something that's been coming through now for a few years, and I believe we've probably presented on it the past couple of years to kind of keep everybody aware of what's going on. So that's one change. The other one, we added an internal service fund this year as a result of you as a district going to self-insured on your health insurance. So I won't spend too much time going over that, but there's some new statements as it relates to that internal service fund. Where I will start, pages 5 through 7 is our auditor's report. Specifically, I'll take you to page 6. Page 6 is our auditor's opinion, and it reads, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of Grand Ledge Public Schools as of June 30, 2018. I paraphrased a little bit there, but it's a lot of words just to eventually say that we, as your independent auditors, are providing you an unmodified opinion over your audited financial statements, and that's the best that we can provide you as your independent auditors. So kudos to you as a district for having a clean audit report there. One thing I will point out is just below that we have an emphasis of a matter paragraph. All that is doing, we had this back when we implemented GASB 68. What that's doing is just stating that we implemented GASB 75 this year. We did have to restate beginning net position balance again on your government-wide statements. That is a one-time paragraph. We'll have that pulled out next year, but we were required to put that in there as an emphasis of a matter paragraph. Starting on page 8 and going through page 15, I'm not going to spend any time on this as part of the presentation, but this is your management discussion and analysis. This is something we're required to have in your financial statements. It's written by management. It's the Reader's Digest version of the financial statements themselves. So if you don't want to sit and go through all 90 pages of this lovely document in front of you, these 14 or 15 or so pages helps kind of break down what happened during the course of the year in a little simpler fashion. So just point that out to you in case you prefer to read that. Where I do want to go and where I'll start in terms of the numbers is page 17. Page 17 is the statement of net position, otherwise known as your balance sheet. This is the full accrual. It relates to your government-wide, so it's all of your funds combined except for your fiduciary funds. So keep that in mind as we go over it. A couple key areas I want to point out on this page. About a third of the way down, just above your total assets, you as a district have about $74 million in capital assets net of accumulated depreciation. Associated to that, you have about $45 million in debt. And I point that out because you're actually paying down your debt quicker than your capital assets are actually being depreciated. So from a district standpoint, you're very fiscally responsible when it comes to taking on debt as it's related to your capital assets. So I just like to point that piece out to you. Just above, about 2/3 of the way down, just above the total liabilities line, you'll see these significant liabilities on your books as it relates to the OPEB and the net pension liability. You as a district, as of June 30, 2018, your proportionate share of the unfunded OPEB piece is about $27 million, and the unfunded net pension liability associated to retirement is about $80 million. So you're looking over $100 million related to those two unfunded pieces as it relates to the state issues and state problems. So, big numbers. So that's where I'll point out at the very bottom there, you'll see your net position is a deficit of about $53 million. Mostly all of that's associated to those two liabilities I brought up. You're not the only district with this big of a deficit. There's very few that actually are showing a positive debt position at this point in time. So I just like to point that out because obviously that looks very, very unusual when you're just kind of taking a look at the statements themselves. Flip over to page 18. This is your income statement for the government-wide financials. I will point out, although you have a $53 million deficit from a net position standpoint, you actually added to your net position as a whole. You started out at the bottom there with a $57 million deficit in net position, but you've actually added to that, so that reduced that deficit down to about $53 million. The one thing I'll point out for that beginning of the year net position balance, that's restated. That's a result of GASB 75. We have a footnote on that, and I'll kind of cover that as we get back to the footnotes. Pages 19 and 20, some highlights here, getting into your actual governmental funds. 19 is your balance sheet, or excuse me, 19 and 20 is your balance sheet over all your governmental funds. A couple highlights here as well. Page 19, middle of the page, you'll see you have a note payable outstanding of about $2.6 million in your general fund. That's your state aid note. That's the state aid set aside. I point that out because in 2019, excuse me, you're not borrowing off state aid. So that number will be zero next year, which is great. Page 20, about a third of the way down, pretty much the number I'm sure most of you care about is where your fund balance lies. Your fund balance for your general fund at the end of the year is about $6.2 million. About 5.8 of that is unassigned. Overall, as a district, all your governmental funds, you're at about just over $10 million in fund balance. Your fund balance as it relates in the general fund to your overall revenues is about 11.7%, which is a fantastic percentage in terms of fund balance. You know, once you start getting close to 5%, you start looking at potentially being a deficit district, and that's not where you want to be. So you're pretty well above that. That's a great rate.
Point out too that fund balance is what has allowed us to not borrow.
Yep.
In this gap year.
Yep. Great point.
And
Yep.
that's just in time for when the interest rates start to climb. Driving in here, I was just hearing that the Fed's probably going to raise them again the next meeting. So we were very lucky that a lot of our borrowing corresponded with a historically low interest rates, or we would have had
Yep.
quite a bit more expense than we already have.
Yep. And just one final statistic there, that $6.2 million fund balance in the general fund, that equates to about $1,187 per student. So again, another great figure there overall. So, and if you flip over to pages 21 and 22, we'll get to the income statement side. You'll notice for the general fund, you actually added to your fund balance this year by about $769,000. It's at the bottom of page 22. Which you came in just above budget, and we'll get to your budget to actual page in a few minutes here, but that's the big highlight there. You did get to add to your general fund. Overall, across all funds, you added by about $1.5 million, so it's good to be a district that's adding to your fund balance, for sure. So the next section, a few sections or pages here, all relate to our footnotes, and I'm not going to bore you with all the footnotes. They really haven't changed that much, I'll be honest with you. One footnote a couple footnotes I will touch on. The one relating to retirement and post-retirement benefits starts on page 45, and it's about 15 pages now, so it just keeps getting longer on us with all these changes that are happening. Again, I'm not going to go over too much of it, but it does detail out a lot of this GASB 68, GASB 75 information, your proportionate share, things that we touched on when we actually looked at the numbers in the statements. And so from that standpoint, I just point that out. So if you're interested on all the changes that are happening, that's at note 8 in your financial statements. The one I do want to touch on starts on page 60, but I'll have you flip to page 61 if you don't mind. That's note 13. And that's our new accounting standard. That discusses GASB 75 and our prior period adjustment relating to that implementation. If you notice, if you were to look at your financial statements last year, your net position is reported at about $29 million. Due to this implementation, which really brought that down another $27 million, that's how we got that restated beginning net position balance of about $57 million. I just walked through that just because in case you do look at last year's, that number's not going to agree from a beginning standpoint just solely because of this implementation. We didn't have any other prior period adjustments for any other accounting issues or related items. So I just want to point that out because that does look different. Just below that is note 14. We do have a couple upcoming pronouncements that we need to keep our eyes on. We had these in last year as well. They are coming through the pipeline. GASB statement number 84 has to deal with your fiduciary accounts. Really, what I'll touch base on this, they're really changing the definition of fiduciary and fiduciary funds. So all of those class of 20X and your theater fund and all that stuff, what the district's going to have to do, and I'm looking at Nancy right now because most of this is going to be legwork for Nancy in the business office, but you're going to have to define who is actually controlling the dollars associated to those groups. If that person who is controlling the dollars works for your district, it's actually going to be considered district funds, and that needs to be put into a special revenue fund. It's no longer considered an agency fund. So there's a little bit more still that needs to come out to this standard, but again, it's going to be a lot of legwork for the business office in defining who's actually controlling those dollars within the district. The other one has to do with leases. This one's been coming through in all industries for a long time. I think we're finally going to have to implement this in 2021. But ideally, it's taking all your leases and turning them into capital leases. You're no longer going to have operating leases. We don't really see this impacting local districts very much. It's probably going to impact more charters where they're leasing buildings and things of that nature. But it could impact you if you're leasing buses or other items. Materiality plays effect in this too. Everyone's got copiers and whatnot. I don't know if we got to capitalize a $1,500 copier or whatnot, but that's just a new standard that's coming through. And again, it's probably going to be more us discussing this with the business office and how to approach that. So things to be aware of. Page 63, budget comparison, your budget to actual, probably one of the most important pages that we have in our audit report. Probably one that you guys care about the most as well. It just breaks down where you came from, where you started with your original budget, where you ended up from a final budget standpoint, and then where you actually ended up. At the very bottom there, you see your net change in fund balance. Your final budget was adding to fund balance by about $662,000. You actually added just over that by about $769,000 that we had talked about already. So very strong year again, and pretty darn close to budget still. So I'll wrap up. One final page here, which is kind of a nice summary for the audit report in general. Page 89, if you don't mind flipping one more time with me. Page 89 is just a nice summary of the audit in general. We did perform a single audit. You do meet the requirements based upon how much you expend for federal dollars. So we performed a single audit. We tested your IDEA program, otherwise known as your special education cluster. We're happy to report we had no compliance issues as it relates to the IDEA program or the single audit. And you'll notice that in the summary page, we don't have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. And from a financial statement standpoint, we don't have anything to report either. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, with an unmodified opinion. So that's pretty much as clean as you can get. So very great audit report. And with that, I'll take any questions. Hopefully I didn't move too fast. Hopefully I didn't move too slow. But any questions for me on the audit report in general?
No, I guess I would like to at least comment that, and I'm on the audit committee, that this is an extremely clean audit, and we care quite a bit that it be an extremely clean audit.
Yep.
So I want to compliment everyone on that, because it's hard for us, even someone with an accounting background, to read an audit, but it's really time consuming for the staff, and so we get there because of the meticulous detail that the staff does in getting ready for the audit, and all through the year being good caretakers of our funds. And so just want to say how much I appreciate it. And for those of you who might be watching this, who might be curious, the answer is yes, we do in fact do a separately audit anyone who has any control over the financial records. So we do keep track of payments that go in and out for all of the people who are the higher ups here. We keep an eye on them. So it's not just a random selection of accounts. We do have some focuses, and so we do double check. I think you would do it anyway, but the school board always requests it, not because we have suspicions, but because it is a good practice to always make sure that internal controls are followed. Thank you.
I have a question. The pension liability, does it look similar in similar sized districts?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, your proportionate share, which is kind of interesting, it's 0.31% of the total unfunded in the pension side, I believe, is like $52 billion unfunded. So, yeah, I mean, I think a district of this side, yeah. I mean, it's based upon covered payroll, and so it can vary a little bit, but if you are interested in that, ORS, the Office of Retirement Services, they have all these tables and reports out there that list out all the districts and list out what their pension liabilities are. So it's free to review. But yeah, I would say so. You know, and unfortunately, I mean, you as a district, you're paying your retirement as you're required to, based upon the rates. And unfortunately, there's really nothing at this stage you can really do about that liability until it starts to get funded again.
Right.
So, and they're working towards that.
It has nothing to do with the practice of this
Nope.
board or any historical practice of this district.
Exactly.
It is entirely in the hands of the state.
Yep. Exactly. So.
That way what you can do is remind your legislators that it's important to be funding this unfunded liability ahead, so that we don't end up looking down the barrel of $107 million if they just give up, because our annual budget is only about $55 million.
And anyone who's curious about that, it's always fun to read some of the background on it. And I can't remember, well, I won't go through what sources, but some of this can be traced to the beginning of charter schools and siphoning off some of the contributions by putting people in a district where I think charters are not required to make pension contributions. but they can take the public school kids and be treated like a public school system, so they can take revenue but not contribute to the system. And that
Wrong.
that hurts. It's wrong. It hurts.
Really is.
It hurts everybody, including the people who teach at those facilities, those institutions.
Outsourcing had the same result.
Outsourcing.
When you look at districts who have chosen to outsource custodial maintenance, food service, transportation, basically they've stopped paying into the retirement system. Yet you have other districts who have those employees, and we have all the employees that have retired for the past 50 years and count on that retirement. So they've underfunded this, and it's really a manufactured crisis.
It is, and in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, and comparing us with other districts, sometimes when you look at a pension report for an organization, it's based on sort of the relative age of the people who are working there, and your past contributions and everything else you've done to build up your fund. But here, a lot of the things that are happening now were after, some economic statewide problems that caused a lot of retirement of teachers, and they were projecting that they would fund that later on. I think it was around 2000 when they took all the health care out of the teaching fund, or the retirement fund. And said, don't worry, you'll just pay as you go. Really great decisions. We're just up here whining.
No. Any other questions?
I'm sorry,
Good one. Oh, that's a good one. Just real quick too, we do have a couple letters. The first one here, the stapled one, is our communication with governance and the finance committee. What I want to say on this, it's a very, very boilerplate letter. That's exactly what you want from us. If we did have issues that we needed to communicate to you all, we would put it in this letter. I'm very happy to report we don't have anything like that. So just want to state that. The second thing here is just this one page, front and back. This is our school district supplement. We started doing this a few years ago. I really like it. It's just a nice little thing to say, here's some things that are coming through the pipeline. It includes the GASB 84 and 87 I commented on, but it also includes a few other things. It's a nice, quick little read, but just things to be aware of as a district that's going to be coming through in terms of school finance and things of that nature. So if there's no more questions, I would just like to reiterate something Sarah mentioned. We come and we do the final audit 3 weeks after year end, which I know Nancy loves, but it's one of the first ones we go and start. And we just appreciate that they're always ready. So I appreciate Nancy in the business office. Thank you to Brian as well. They're always accessible. They always give us the information we need. They always have things ready for us. So I really want to say thank you. It's a very, very great audit report. Everything is clean as a result. And for doing it 3 weeks after year end, that's pretty phenomenal. So thank you to you guys as well. So we appreciate it. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brings us to the Capital Connection report.
Capital Connections, not a lot going on right now legislatively. So I don't have a whole lot to report. I did want to mention the Michigan Association of School Boards annual leadership conference is taking place in November in Grand Rapids, focusing on student success. Nell Duke is going to be one of their speakers, and for those of you who are not educators, Nell Duke is somebody that I had the privilege of working with. She's amazing, dealing primarily with literacy and some of our younger learners, but an amazing speaker. So it just sounds like it's going to be a really good conference. I'm hoping I might be able to go for a day or two. Wanted to share that, and that's all I have for Capital Connections.
You don't mind, I'll make an addendum that this is the time of year when the people who set policy and funding for public education are at their most accessible, and that is when they are walking through your neighborhood, your town, your parades. And I encourage you to remind them, encourage them to keep in mind the importance of public education for our children and for our future. And I will also mention that both of your state senate candidates are having walk days in this area next week, and that might be a great time to catch one of them. Next, we have the Eaton Reesa report. Mr. Bennett sent me an email, and I will read it verbatim. All apologies on not having a report last month. Here's a report since then. Director of Business Janet Yakum will be retiring effective March 1, 2019.
That is a dark day.
Yes.
Southridge renovations are nearing completion, and an open house/ribbon cutting will take place on Wednesday, October 19th, 2018, followed by a regular board meeting. Packard Building has been undergoing renovations and improvements in lighting, security, carpeting, furnishings, painting, etc. There is also some anticipated HVAC work that will commence in 2019. Authorized CTE program agreements with Davenport for classes in Business Academy, Game Design, and Medical Assisting Academy. Eaton Risa was awarded a federal grant for the CDC to provide additional supports for sex education and HIV prevention. Work will focus on a consortium of priority districts: Grand Ledge, DeWitt, Lansing, Holt, Eaton Rapids, and possibly Waverly. Kathleen Suzminski has been hired as the Assistant Superintendent for CTE. Thanks, Jay Bennett. That concludes his report.
The assistant for CTE?
Yes. The Assistant Superintendent.
Assistant Superintendent.
For CTE.
Oh, okay.
They've been without one for a while?
Sue Gardner took a position over in Kent County.
Oh, that's closer to home.
Yeah. Yeah, she lives there. I just don't
Maybe not,
remember what the
yes.
position was.
Oh,
Then that brings us to the Grand Ledge Education Foundation.
The Grand Ledge Education Foundation currently has applications out for teachers to apply for grants. Those grants are up to $1,000 an educator, or they can do, if they're working with a team member, up to $2,000. Those are due Friday, October 12th by 4 o'clock, and we will be holding a Night of the Stars when we announce the award winners on November 8th at the high school at 7 o'clock.
how much money do they get for grants this year? Each grant?
I do not have the answer to that because we have not had a meeting since the fun run, or June. So I do not have up-to-date financial information.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Just a couple of items. First of all, I want to recognize the work that Nancy Rosinski and her team have done this past year, and I would say every year, but since we just talked about the audit today, I'm going to recognize this past year. It's very comforting to know that when we go to Nancy and ask for projections or any type of numerical anything in this district, one, she has the history. She knows where to find it. She has it in her files, and she can pull that out very quickly and extremely accurately. And it's just a pleasure to work with Nancy and her team, and it's really a pleasure to work with somebody that is that reliable. And yeah, we just count on her. So, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nancy.
I know.
No, I can. You know, it's something that if we made a purchase 25 years ago, Nancy says, I've got that. Or if we've, had somebody on the payroll and we're looking for it. When the state came back and said, we're going to do this 3% refunding, I thought, boy, this is going to be a ton of work. And I think it was a ton of work. But when Nancy said, nope, this is what it is, and here, she went back and had it detailed. And we could point out that the state had made a couple of mistakes. So it's just really, really fortunate to have somebody of this caliber on our team, and her entire team serves us very well.
Don't say very nice things about her. With Janet Yakum leaving, you can't,
I'm saying that here. I told Cindy that she was impossible to work with. So.
Oh, good. Good. That worries me.
Yeah, I've already told Nancy she's not allowed to even think about that position.
Yeah.
More chains on her.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being a pack rat. You always have to have your backup when it comes to numbers, so.
Oh,
Next on my list, we are still making the rounds and putting out lots of information regarding the 2 bond questions. And we're going to have 3 more nights in the room right next door here, September 26th. I think it's Wednesday this week, October 2nd, and October 4th, which is Tuesday and Thursday of next week. We will be in the administrative conference room, again, right next door here at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. I would invite anybody and everybody to attend. I've had many phone calls and emails and texts in the last 2 weeks, and I probably spent 3 hours today answering questions. So if there's anybody in our viewing audience that has a question, you can reach me, and we'll get you whatever information you need to have in order to make a educated vote. I will also mention that we will be at the City Council on October 8th, and I don't believe we're going to do a full hour presentation at the City Council, but we'll certainly be there to do just some general background, provide some information, answer any questions they may have as well. And that would conclude my report for tonight.
Ryan, what about, you're doing something for city council, what about Delta Township Board? Have you considered that?
You know, we haven't yet, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Or I should say, I don't know that it's on our list yet, but
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. And have we had any presentations scheduled to be in the Delta Township area?
just the schools. We haven't had anything. Yeah, we haven't been invited. We've presented to Rotary, and I think we've got a Lions Club presentation coming up. I spoke at Delta Government Relations about 3 weeks ago, but not a full hour-blown presentation yet.
Thank you. That brings us to public comment on non-agenda items. Seeing no rushing to the microphone, let's move on to old business. And I would entertain a motion for the approval of the 2017-2018 audit.
Happily move the approval of the fiscal 2017-18 audit. We'll give it right now.
2017-18.
It's in there. Can you play it?
The second? Really? Another motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item?
No, I just want to congratulate again. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a bad audit as long as I've been with the district, and I think now it's just amazing to me to finally not have, or I can't emphasize that enough, I just how great that is. Borrowing that kind of money and that kind of interest, it just seems like a waste right out the window, so very happy about that.
I would also like to say that I appreciate Nancy's work, and I have served on the audit committee the last 2 years. It is not my area of expertise, to say the least. A little bit outside my comfort zone, but I have learned a lot. I've met with Nancy, and she very patiently went through all the questions I had when I read through and highlighted and carried on. I've learned a lot, and I know that this upcoming the fiduciary activities account is going to be something that's going to be a lot of additional work for Nancy. But we talked about that when we met a year ago, and it was something she was already aware of and was anticipating looking at and clearing out and updating. So once again, I just like to reiterate that I think Nancy goes above and beyond, has an awareness, and we are very fortunate to have her. And to be able to explain this kind of documentation to me is a great skill. Thank you.
I'd actually like to comment on that too. This is an area where it's closer to my comfort zone, but it doesn't make it easy. It's reading an audit of this scale is pretty complex. Well, it's pretty hard to try and connect the dots, and if you don't sort of know how to connect the schedule. So I really appreciated it, that not only that you served on the committee, Denise, but that you went out of your way to get a little more background on it, straight from the horse's mouth. And an audit seems like no big deal. They're boring. They say you have a clean audit, that's unmodified, and you say, oh, thanks, and you throw it over on the table, and it represents a huge effort by people. But when a board member takes an interest, that's important because, and I feel like I'm now like talking about the old days or something, but when it has been something for the last 4 or 5 years that I've thought about Eaton Risa and how they had a failed audit with many findings, material findings, and the board members were under the impression that they had a great audit. They knew so little that they were not concerned at what was a highly unusual audit. So, you know, as dull as it can seem, dull is wonderful, but I really deeply appreciate it that you went out and talked to Nancy and got a walkthrough on that audit to get familiar with it. It's a big deal.
I never sleep so well as that night after an audit.
So we'll just give you some ERISA statutes to read, or some actuarial studies.
Oh, I didn't want to be put in a coma.
Just sleep, no coma.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the audit, say aye.
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 All opposed, no. And the audit is. That brings us to new business, and we have a communication action plan presentation for the 2018 bond. You may commence, sir.
Well, I was going to read the rules of public comment just to help put me at ease,
Oh, no.
Old time's sake.
just for old time's sake.
You have 3 minutes, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys unanimously adopted 2 bond proposals to put on the ballot. You did that on August 13th. At that point, we had 85 days until the election. And just to give you a little context of where we are, we've got 43 days now until the bonds. So we're only at halftime. And that's one of the things I think a well-orchestrated information campaign is sort of a crescendo. That we want to be, you don't need to be super excited and use all our energy and tools right at the beginning. You want to keep building up so it's there and it keeps building. So that's part of the approach, and we still have a whole half to go. The next day, we put up the bond information page on glcommets.net. There's a link right to it on the homepage, and then we had ballot language, and that particular web page has been updated frequently, even today. And we'll talk more about the video that we just put up. The homepage and the bond proposals page are updated frequently. Frequently asked questions, we're going to be putting that up. We've got some information back from GMB, so we're going to submit that for legal review. But again, if you want to know what's going on, that's where you can go. The presentations that we do at the community events, that presentation's there. The bond board posters, they're up there on that page too. So this is a great depository for all the information that we're sharing. Ryan mentioned this already. We've been doing face-to-face presentations going all the way back to August 16th. So again, you adopted or put them on the ballot on the 13th. I guess actually the 15th was our first one. We talked at Rotary. 16th was the opening day. We presented to the staff that was at the opening day meeting. We've been at all the buildings, and we've met with the employee groups, including custodial maintenance and the bus drivers. So we've been telling our employees what's the plan, what's it look like, so they have the information. We've been meeting with the local organizations as much as possible, and then we have the 4 scheduled community events. We did one already, which you may have noticed had some news coverage as well. And Brian mentioned that our next ones are Wednesday, September 26th, Tuesday and Thursday, October 2nd and 4th. Very specifically, when I was lining up those dates too, I made sure that we were getting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you have kids or obligations in the evening with other things, if you schedule them all for the same night, you can get some very disgruntled people that say, well, you scheduled them all for Wednesday, I have X on Wednesday. So that was a very conscious decision to try to open it up to each day of the week as much as possible. So those are the face-to-face presentations. One thing I didn't mention there was we're going to City Council. As groups invite us, we work to make sure that either Brian, Steve, or myself are available to present. To the Lions Club I'm going to in October, I believe. Mrs. Kathy Jackson invited me to do that as well. So face-to-face presentations will continue until people stop inviting us to talk. And you mentioned Delta Township, so we'll reach out and see if they have an interest in having us at one of their meetings as well. Informational flyers, having some sort of fact sheet, effectively what it was, and we still use this. This is our base one. You've seen them, I believe, before. Again, those were out immediately. The 16th, when we had the open houses at the elementary schools, each elementary school had a whole bunch of these available to be picked up. They're available at all our school offices and various community locations, both the Delta Library and the Grand Ledge Library. City Hall has a whole bunch of them. This Friday will be the first round where the informational flyer will go home on their Friday folders, and then we'll do another one in about a month, so they'll see it again closer to the election date. And again, these have been sort of the basis of the information that we've been providing, and it's just a nice, simple thing. I have lots more. Informational flyers are something that you can take to events as board members to share the information. That's a simple way to start a conversation too. So if you ever need any, please shoot me an email or call me, and I'll happily make a trip to make it easy for you if you have a need for more flyers. Also, newspaper appearances. One of the things that I have been told is there's always a contingent of people that say they didn't know. And you may not know this, but I'm a big social media guy. I enjoy the electronic media. This print media stuff is different for me. So, but newspaper appearance is an important part of an information campaign because not everyone is as wired as I am, apparently. We did that again first. We had an insider where 3 of the pages were dedicated to the bond proposal. There was a letter from Dr. Metcalf, and then our informational flyer was in there as well. That went out in the Grand Ledge Independence. We've had columns. The superintendent column, he had one this past weekend that was talking about the community forums. And then coming up, beginning Wednesday, we're going to be running 6 weeks of half-page, full-color informational advertisements in the Lansing State Journal, again, dedicated to reaching people that the electronic social media might not reach, to provide information. That's our goal here for our role in the bond, is to provide that information. So that's how we're using the newspapers to reach people that social media and the website might not meet. Mass mailings, we already sent one out. We sent a mass mailing out September 19th. The goal there was simply that we wanted to get information into the hands of people, ideally shortly before absentee ballots would be in their hands. So that was an important timing piece that we worked out to make sure we would hit that. We'll do another direct mailing piece October 30th or thereabouts, again in preparation for the actual election day. Again, direct mailings have some limitations. We hit 3 zip codes, and you know me, I study, so I looked at the zip codes. We have to pay the process. We'd have to pay for a full zip code to do the direct mailing. So I picked the 3 that got us anywhere, and again, it's hard to tell because some of the precincts have multiple zip codes in them, but we're getting anywhere from 71% to 91% of the voters with the 3 zip codes that we sent. So it was not, we were using our resources wisely instead of sending to a zip code where there's 5 of our voters or something and 95% of them are something else. So if you didn't get a mailing, I'll be happy to give you information. But the reason they were sent to those 3 zip codes is it was maximizing our voters, getting information to our voters, and minimizing our cost in doing so.
I can tell you that, since I live out in the boonies, the Wakusta area, several individuals got it. They didn't have any children in the school district, so these are individuals that we would have missed anyway. And some of them commented to me how well they thought the flyers were and are very supportive of the bond. So that was good.
Good. The newspaper and the mailing piece, again, the digital divide is not usually used in that world, but there is a digital divide between older people, digital immigrants, and the digital natives. And
Come here, I
like
want
this.
to talk to you.
I'm just telling you.
I don't fit into any of those.
I don't either.
In an effort to reach as many people as possible, the mass mailings and newspaper ads were part of it. So I'm glad to hear that did facilitate that.
Some of them weren't that.
I don't want to rumble with you, Sarah. That's just.
Oh, I've
now I'm
already
worried
told
about
John
that.
We're talking afterwards.
Right. Bond boards just got delivered late last week, so I've been on the road putting them up in all the elementary school buildings. You may have noticed outside this boardroom we have a full set of the bond boards there. You can get it digitally on our website as well. I'll be headed over to the high school tomorrow or Wednesday to set up 2 or 3 displays there, full displays. Again, that being more of a community place where lots of people are going, we figure that will be a good place to have the whole display. Usually at the elementary school buildings, there's a summary board and then the building itself. And if it's a repurposed building, for example, Beagle right now is an elementary school, we have the Beagle board, but we also have the Holbrook board, which is where those students would be going to, just to help parents get a feel for what might happen to their students and where they would go. So those are available. They're also a nice piece, again, to start conversation. If you hang out at one of the locations with the bond boards, I imagine you'll be able to initiate some conversations. Since you're allowed to do more than share information, that might be a useful place to hang out. Social media campaign, typically we're going to use that to reinforce other parts of our campaign. And again, this is an information campaign. We are sharing information. Video is king in social media. We got our video Friday late and very explicit instructions on how to upload it properly and get the proper closed captioning on it. It was excellent help from GMB on that. We have that up. We've put it up on our website. We put it up on the bond page. It's on Facebook and on Twitter right now. I can tell you, less than 12 hours, the video has already reached 3.5 or 3,500 people, and it's been viewed over 1,000 times. And again, we're still under 12 hours. We are using some resources to boost that post to make sure that we're reaching it. Again, with some of the Facebook tools, I went to a digital communications workshop that helped, and GMB gave some assistance too, but we're able to focus that so again that we're not wasting resources. It's very targeted where we're boosting that post, getting it more visible to people that are using Facebook. Also, there's often discussion on social media. We have a number of staff members that I like to call them social media information ambassadors, that they frequently are sharing information or directing them to come to presentations. And we also have community members that are doing that same sort of thing. I think viewing it that way as an ambassadorship in terms of sharing information doesn't need to be a confrontational situation, even on Facebook, although that often begs that kind of interaction. Just sharing, here's where you can go to get more information. That's a great way to keep it focused on facts and information as opposed to getting into opinion and history and other. Election day is November 6th. Absentee ballots have been available roughly since September 22nd. The voter registration deadline is October 9th, and the polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's the end of it. Again, we're at halftime right now. We've since you put it on the ballot, we've gone about 40 days, and we've got a little over 40 days left. So there's more to come. The advertising piece in the Lansing State Journal is a big piece. We have some more shorter videos that we're going to be able to cycle in. We're using Channel 21. Kim's been very helpful getting information up on that. We're also going to be using our email system to communicate with parents as well. So there are a few other pieces that we're adding in as we go, and we just got another message from GMB that I didn't have time to digest this afternoon that had some other suggestions. Brian came in and told me, I think we're checking off most of them. So I think we're on track to successfully give the appropriate information to our communities so they can make an educated decision. So, what questions, suggestions? You already mentioned the Delta one. What other ways do you think we can share information or that you'd like?
You know, I want to encourage the community because I've been to several of the presentations. The one that was held here in Sodden wasn't very well attended. It was a small group, bigger groups at the PTAs, but I really think if you want to get really detailed information about what's in this bond proposal, you need to attend one of these.
Wednesday, September 26th, Tuesday, October 2nd, Thursday, October 4th.
I really think it's helpful to attend, even if the city council meeting. I mean, I think there's a lot more detail if that's what you're looking for. You know, I think it'd be very helpful. I agree.
You're going to hear a pretty standard answer from me to this kind of question. I'm happy to help coordinate getting information. That's my role. That's my job here in the department or in the district capacity. Anything that's advocacy based is out of what I can do from my office here at Sawden. Having some sort of, I believe the yes committee, if you will, I'm hearing is starting to get formed or is in its infancy, but that's not something that I dictate to or that we really can tell, here's what you do. I mean, I can help coordinate with it as a citizen, but that it's, to me personally, it's a tough balancing act, and I work very hard to maintain that. I am here as an information specialist. I can provide information, but anytime it's an advocacy issue, I can't really speak to it.
We've recommended PTOs help to orchestrate some of that and orchestrate a vote. Yes, I know of a few of the parents who have started to organize a little bit of that. And that's one of the things I've suggested is that they reach out. I've suggested that they get involved online as well, because when the parents come out and say, nope, I attended the meeting and this is the facts, that's been very helpful as I've watched, Facebook and some of the comments, and the people that attend the meetings have the facts, and I think that's gone very well. There's a few people out there who haven't attended meetings or have attended meetings and not gotten it right. So yeah, I've encouraged the PTOs to really find a way to reach out to other parents and other individuals.
And, the other thing, my concern is, I've seen some of the social media comments as well about, we don't know our math. We don't know, it can't only be this many mills. But, for those that are interested, find that, I don't know how much to emphasize that, because it just seems like it's a no voter and they're going to vote no and this is their reason. But the thing is, it's a 10-year plan. We're not taking all this money out initially. We're taking out incrementally so the tax rate doesn't go up and we're paying interest on selling those bonds right away. That's why it remains low.
Informationally, that I'm thoroughly impressed with how we've organized that first proposal. If you look at what Charlotte's proposing, they're getting much less money for the same mill increase. So the way it's been structured, the way we've worked together to make that a reality and phasing in those plans, that's a impressive way to organize things.
And we just heard from our auditor that we pay down our debt. And a lot of school districts don't do that. They found other creative financing the past year, so they just pay the interest on their debt. But we actually pay down our debt very quickly. And so that's another reason why this will work for our districts. Hear me out there.
Yeah, the math works, and it is using interest judiciously, and the timing and laddering of what you do makes a big difference. And it's not that we couldn't have done it before, but it just depends on the type of projects you're doing, and these lend itself to that kind of laddering that we didn't really have as much opportunity in the past. So it has to do with how long it takes to build something, how long an asset that we're investing in lives. It's got a lot to do with all of that. So plus the interest rates are still fairly low, and we've grown, so it's spread over a bigger tax base. So, anyway, it works.
Other suggestions or methods to share information that you didn't hit that you're like, have you thought about X?
I know that Delta Township is a big part of our district. So any way we can get there, and that's my only concern, to get to that.
Make it more convenient for them to come to an informational meeting. I wrote it down. Nothing like getting homework.
Yeah, but a lot of those, their alumni was pretty good. Delta Township, I mean, they have a strong allegiance to it. I know Delta Township does too, but I think those are the people that, if we go to the city, they go to Delta Township. It's a start. There's some way we can do something to help that way besides the schools. I don't know exactly where, maybe the township office, just do a presentation at the township.
What I've done and what I'm going to continue to do is some Facebook Live interviews with different people in the community, parents, former students, realtors, small business owners, that, you know, I kind of do a little living room interview about how it will affect them, how it will affect the community. I have a couple other ideas about how I want to go out to the schools and show some of the people, like you said, video is king. Physically show the people what improvements we could use in some of the schools, and you know, what does a pickup line look like at Delta Center at 4 o'clock. I don't know how I'm going to get on the roof, but that would be cool to kind of see. You know, something like that, to where you kind of take it out and let people, you know, you show the information to them. So that, you know, we talk about what would it look like with improved, you know, if we had a road coming into Michigan Avenue, and that doesn't mean a whole lot unless you see what does the pickup line look like at Delta Center. So, you know, I'm going to try and continue to get some information across that way.
Efforts.
Were you primarily responsible for the video that was posted today as far as the putting it together, et cetera?
No, I simply did the mechanics of the sharing and whatnot. GMB was here, I think, in the spring, and they've been a wonderful partner in helping us share information with the community. They'd worked on that, doing the raw footage, getting that footage, I believe it was in the spring. And then they've been working on processing it and putting it together.
It was very well done. I watched it today and shared. And I think as board members, the more that we can get out and talk to people one-on-one, and as you said, we can certainly advocate for it. I have made sure there are flyers where I get my hair cut, where I go for chiropractic, where I go for massage. I mean, I'm just taking them everywhere with me.
If you need more,
I still have a good supply, but I know how to get hold of you. But I really feel that enthusiasm that we can show and just support all the work that's being done to get that word out there, and reiterate and, you know, encourage anyone with questions to contact Brian or yourself. That one-on-one makes a big difference, and if we all have different community areas that we touch, and I think if we continue to really stand up and shout from the mountains why this is so wonderful for Grant Ledge, we can again continue to impact people that might take it at a different way from the first one. I applaud all your efforts.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Very well done, everything I've seen.
you get a lot of help from a lot of people too.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. That brings us to public comment on agenda items. Seeing nothing, I would now entertain comments from the staff and board. If you don't mind, I'd like to begin with the staff.
Yes, I would just like to welcome. We have a group of students and faculty here from Lona, Germany. They arrived tonight. They are next door, actually, for their meet and greet. We've had a relationship with Lona for 37, 38 years now. So this exchange program has been in place for that long, and every other year, a group of students and staff from Lona come and visit us, and they spend 2 weeks here taking part in our school activities and living with families, and then the opposite year, our students go there. So I just want to welcome that group. It's been a great relationship with them over the years, and we're very happy to have them here again this year.
How many students?
I do not know the numbers. Typically, there's at least a dozen. Typically, is it 13 this year? Okay.
And I just want to thank the board and Dr. Metcalf for the comments regarding the audit presentation tonight. But I also want to thank my staff because they work very, very, very hard to bring this all together too, because that 3-week time frame to get everything around is quite challenging, but they keep coming back to work. So they they do such a great job, and that is why this all comes together the way it does. So.
I'd like to thank Steve. I've been to a couple of his presentations on the bond. He's done a very nice job. Had to skip out early on one of them, but he's done a very nice job from what I've seen. I thought the Willow Ridge one was the largest so far, so that was good to see. Nancy, great job. Thank you for all your work and your staff. And John, continue to do a good job. Doing a good job. Thank you.
I gotta say, I went to the Willow Ridge PTA, and that was Steve's. He did that one alone. The guy needed water. You guys usually tag team it back and forth, but he did a tremendous job doing it on your own. Because that was a curious group. They had a lot of good questions, as they all have. Everyone's had great questions. Make you think about things you haven't thought of in those presentations. So thank you both.
I think I'm making a note. He's not going to be there October 4th, so I'm going to take extra water.
You're gonna have to be
Oh, what?
hydrated.
Shorts, a little warm.
Seeing nothing else, we have future topics. There, as we've heard a couple of times this evening, community bond presentations at 6 p.m. in the Administrative Conference Room, Wednesday, September 26, 2018, Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018, Thursday, October 4th, 2018. There will be a Board Bond Advisory Committee Monday, October 8th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. in Sodden Room 107, a work session Monday, October 8th, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the Administrative Conference Room, and a regular meeting on Monday, October 22nd, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the Sodden Boardroom. Having reached the end to the thing, I will adjourn us at 7:03 p.m. Thank you very much.